It's another Thursday night, our crypto night, and you're watching Crypto Trader on CNBC Africa, still the world's only televised cryptocurrency investment show. Before we start our show today, let's take a look at the Bitcoin price. Yes, the Bitcoin price is at an all-time high, the markets are at an all-time high, we've had another jam-packed week, and there's lots to talk about. So joining us from Tel Aviv to help make sense of this all is Mark Kenningsberg. Mark is the founder of a blog called Bitcoin Chaser. Mark, another record week on the markets, Bitcoin again at all-time highs. What's happening with the Bitcoin coin?
Yes, Duran, we saw an all-time high of over 4,600 this week, and that was really driven by two things. The first is an SEC announcement on Monday about potential crackdown on altcoin trading and ICOs, and then an announcement out of China that they plan on regulating as well. So that, as well as some money that was waiting to see what would happen with Bitcoin Cash price, that all flooded back into Bitcoin this week, driving up the price.
Talking about Bitcoin Cash, that coin's had quite a tough week. I saw it trading at close to $500 at one stage.
Yeah, it's come off the start of the week at about 660, and then we saw two difficulty adjustments down for mining. And on the second one on Monday, not all of the hash power came back, which meant that Bitcoin with its price increase was more profitable to mine than Bitcoin Cash. So as a result, there was downward pressure on the price and we saw it go down below 500s.
So it seems that this war between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash isn't going away anytime soon. But one of the coins that's really had a good run because of this is the Litecoin coin. I've seen that coin trading at all-time highs. What's driving that move?
So that as well, we saw all-time highs above $60, as high as 62. And that's really a function of two things. One is the general market uncertainty about altcoins. Litecoin is traditionally perceived as a very safe coin, so money came back into it. As well as there was very positive test results about some more developments that Litecoin's doing towards the Lightning Network that would benefit Bitcoin. So people were happy to put money back in.
Monero continuing its amazing run. It was listed on the Korean exchange 2 weeks ago and it hit an all-time high, but that run just keeps running.
I think we've got to look at Dash and Monero together this week. Both of them had all-time highs. Dash touched above 400, as high as 405, and Monero went up to about 150. Now, with uncertainty and announcements coming out from regulators, a lot of people see privacy coins as something that's going to be more and more used as people try and invest. So both of those coins benefited from the news. Monero got an extra push. As it went up in price, it crossed the $1 billion market cap, and that momentum pushed it higher, as high as 150.
Tell me about the Monaco coin. That Monaco coin's had a fantastic run, but it came down quite sharply in the last 2 days. What caused that dip?
We have to go back a couple of months to look at the ICO that Monaco launched. When Monaco launched, it did so without a lot of information beforehand, and it promised to deliver a Visa solution that could work with cryptocurrency. Now, the CEO of the company, Chris Marsalek, at the time when it was announced, there was a lot of talk about his previous company Insogo and how that had been shut down by the Australian Exchange Commission. So there was a lot of talk whether this was legit or a scam, and in the end, the ICO did very, very well. But this week they announced that their app is finally going to be ready, which will allow the ordering of Visa cards. And that pushed the price up really high. We saw as low as $10 this week it started and went up to about 30. But then as people started getting excited about the news, this conversation resurfaced about the scam and the history of the CEO, and a lot of people just don't believe that there's going to be delivery. So I guess we'll have to see. It's meant to be tomorrow, and we'll find out if it's real.
The two competing blockchains, Ethereum and the Chinese version, Neo. Ethereum had an amazing run this week. Neo's come down a hell of a lot. What's driving the Neo price down?
That's also linked to the Chinese news. You know, Neo's been on a great run this year, by far one of the best performing coins over the year. And that really is the fact that it's meant to be a blockchain out of China, something that could compete with Ethereum, launch ICOs, and has a lot of Chinese support. So when the regulators announced this week that they plan to crack down on ICOs, and they may even stop it completely in the short term, then that directly affects Neo's growth strategy. So people are concerned about the price. But the volume is high, so there's definitely still interest in the coin.
Speaking of ICOs, Spencer Bogart is someone that sees more ICOs than anyone we know. And he's really picky about the ones that he chooses to invest in. We're going to be having a conversation with Spencer to help us decide which ICOs we should invest in. Spencer, nice to have you back on our show. You see a lot of ICOs. Tell us, what should our viewers be looking at when they're looking to invest in ICOs?
I mean, I think the team has to come first and foremost, right? I mean, fundamentally, these are early stage projects. So, the first thing that we're looking at is, does the team have deep knowledge of the market that they're working in? And have they built a business before?
And when you say the team, does the team have to consist of blockchain developers, of cryptographers? What kind of a team is a good team?
Not necessarily. It really depends on what you're building. I mean, if you're building a protocol, a blockchain-based protocol, then yes, probably. If you're building something that leverages kind of a tokenized asset, but mainly involves real estate, then we're going to be looking for a team with deep experience in real estate.
So now that we've got a good team, what else are we looking for? What else makes a great ICO? What makes you invest in things?
We're going to be looking at the problem and the solution. So how pervasive is the problem, and where's the trend on it, and how compelling is the solution, and can it get better over time?
So Spencer, give us some ICOs that you are looking at or that you have looked at that have really checked all the boxes.
Yeah, so a couple of our favorite ones, this year have been kind of 0x, Filecoin, Civic. I think those are three of our favorite ones so far this year, but there have been quite a few that we've been quite fond of.
Tell us very quickly why those are your actual favorite ICOs. Maybe give us a little bit more insight.
Yeah, again, it definitely involves, so again, a lot of the team, a lot of looking at the market, and in particular, if I hone in on 0x and I think about kind of this liquidity problem between tokens and across exchanges, 0x presents a solution that may or may not work, but we think it has a reasonable chance of working, and if it does, it could be a big business. And then most importantly, I think across all of these are network businesses, which means that their winner takes most. And we feel pretty confident in our ability to pick the winners in those particular categories.
Spencer, let's talk about Filecoin. That ICO is still going, and they've raised north of $200 million. Now that's a very small business that's raised $200 million. Are you still bullish on this business?
We are bullish on the business. I mean, I think that in general, people are looking at this and comparing them to traditional equity rounds, and I think that's overall reasonable approach. In the case of Filecoin, you need to attract a lot of developers and a lot of users to the network, and having a big pile of cash, $200 million or north of that, is one good way to signal to developers and to users that, hey, you should come and participate in our network.
How many ICOs do you see, and of that, how many do you actually invest in?
We probably inbound receive maybe a dozen or 2 dozen a day, and we probably invest in, at this rate, maybe 1 out of 150.
1 out of 150 ICOs, that's a very, very good ratio. So now we know what to look for before we invest in an ICO. Let's take a look at 2 ICOs and make a decision whether or not we want to invest in them. The first one is a company called Propy, and their CEO, Natalia Karayaneva, is one of the most dynamic entrepreneurs in the blockchain space. I had the privilege of being hosted by Natalia in San Francisco earlier this year, and let me tell you, this is a special, special business. Natalia, welcome to our show. When I visited you in San Francisco earlier this year, we were talking about Propy. It's amazing to see that this thing that we were talking about is now reality. Tell us, what exactly does Propy do?
Propy is the first global real estate marketplace with online purchasing functionality powered by smart contract. We are digitizing the $217 trillion real estate market and turning real estate asset into commodity by allowing users to execute payment and paperwork and ownership transfer by smart contracts.
Just explain to us in practical terms what that actually means. I mean, if I'm sitting in South Africa and I want to buy a property in San Francisco, how would I use Propy?
It means you as a user can browse for property in global cities such as San Francisco, London, and Dubai in your native languages, currently in English, Chinese, Arabic, Russian, and you can, after choosing the property, to buy it entirely online. You can pay for the property in fiat or crypto and execute the paperwork, and then finally receive an electronic title deed with a hash on blockchain. And then on behalf of you, we will approve this title deed with the local authority, or the local authority, if recognize our title deed, then the title deed will be the final document for you as a user.
Natalia, we've heard a lot about how important the teams are in these ICOs. Can you tell us a little bit about your team? How many members in your team are there? What do they actually do?
Sure, we're 15 people right now. 5 executive members are in Silicon Valley. Myself, I'm a real estate developer for 12 years. And we have John Wang from China, who managed a billion-dollar fund in China. We have Andrei Zamovsky, our blockchain architect. And we have 5 people in Ukraine, one of the best brains in blockchain, and 5 people in Bulgaria. These are the engineers that I have been working with for many years.
Now, you're in the middle of your ICO. How much money are you trying to raise? How much have you raised? How many tokens are you issuing? And when does your token sale close?
We have issued 100 million tokens, and we're selling 35% of those. So our hard cap is about $30 million. We've raised 13 so far, and the sale process will go till 15th of September. 35% will go for network growth pool to attract new users, home buyers, and brokers. 15% will go for donation to increase the number of blockchain engineers all over the world. And 15, the rest of the tokens will be dedicated to the company.
And if our viewers want to get involved and buy some of your tokens, where can they get more information?
Tokensale.propy.com. This is our website for selling tokens. The white paper is available there, and there is a buying widget where users can buy pro tokens entirely online and get the pro tokens right away.
Natalia, all sounds like exciting stuff. We're going to be keeping an eye on your token sale, and we'll talk again after the 15th of September. Thanks for coming on our show. With over $2 billion being poured into the ICO market, it's no wonder that this market is subject to hacks and scams. One of the companies that was involved in such a hack is a company called Enigma. And with us today, we've got Tor Bear, who's the Group Marketing Director. Tor, thanks for joining us. You guys were involved in a little bit of a scam this week. Tell us a little bit about what happened.
Sure. So what happened to Enigma was some well-coordinated, sophisticated scammers compromised our Slack channel, and they compromised our landing page, and they were hoping to trick members of the Enigma community into sending funds to a fake address claiming that there was a special sale. This happened on August 21st, and our crowd sale is not until September 11th, so it was unexpected. Our community overall was amazing. They spotted the scam attempt almost immediately. They notified the Enigma team, but unfortunately, with over 10,000 people in our social channels, some people were sending funds before we were able to fully shut down our Slack and our landing page.
So what actually happened is they infiltrated your website and your Slack landing page, and they pretended to be you guys and told people to pay money into an ICO which hadn't even opened yet. What are you doing about this?
We're preparing a number of security steps on our end to prepare for the crowd sale. Unfortunately, we hadn't fully implemented all of these steps when the scam attempt occurred. At this point, we've recovered and secured all the Enigma accounts and web pages. We've introduced password rotations and other security measures, and we're going to be working with a number of independent security advisors going forward.
And did anyone actually pay money to these scammers?
Unfortunately, yes. The result is the scammers collected around 500,000 USD, which is a significant sum, and it's really terrible for our community. But if you think about it, it's only a drop in the bucket looking at the total amount of funds that have been stolen by scammers who have targeted ICOs in recent months. It really is a widespread problem in the industry.
And what about the people that did lose their $500,000? Is the company doing anything to assist these people?
Yes, we actually recently announced, our CEO said we're going to be refunding after the token sale the lost funds to the scammers who impersonated us. We're also working with law enforcement, a special cybercrime division, some exchanges, other companies in our space, and our community to track the scammers. We've actually been able to freeze some of the stolen funds, which is a big win for the community and for us.
Tor, let's put the scam and the malice aside. When this all happened, I started researching the Enigma company and the Enigma ICO, and it's really one of the most exciting companies that I've ever come across. Give us a little bit of insight about what you guys actually do.
So Enigma is building a decentralized data marketplace. Data is this century's most valuable currency, but it's being hoarded and it's being siloed in large organizations by governments, individuals, and so on. But that's not when data is at its most valuable. We believe it's valuable when it can be openly licensed and exchanged. So that's why we're creating a collaborative data marketplace and community. We've written a white paper about the Enigma protocol. You can find it on our website, enigma.co.
Give us a more practical example of what that actually means.
Yeah, that's a great point. It doesn't do anybody any good if this is a purely academic exercise. So we built Catalyst, which is our first application that's going to be running on the Enigma protocol. Catalyst allows anyone to essentially build their own crypto trading strategies by consuming financial data from our data marketplace and then using our backtesting and trading tools to create their strategies. It's a great first use case for Enigma. We already have a live alpha for Catalyst available on our website as well.
So this is almost like a Bloomberg, but for cryptocurrencies, or the first Bloomberg type protocol for cryptocurrencies. Tell us a little bit more about your token sale. How many tokens? When does your ICO open?
So we're issuing 100 million tokens in total. We're going to be making 50 million of those available during our crowd sale on September 11. And the function of the token is that data sets that are licensed on the platform of Enigma will be licensed in ENG. People who consume the data will pay ENG to consume the data in the marketplace. So in effect, ENG tokens are representing the flow of data on Enigma and Catalyst. And this is the first time they're going to be made available publicly.
So basically, if I have data and I want to start earning money on that data, I'll start earning money through the tokens. And if I want to buy data, I'd have to buy the tokens in order to buy the data. Is that right?
You've got that right, exactly. And as the platform grows, the value of these tokens is the value of the data.
If any of our viewers want to participate in your token sale, what do they need to do? Where do they need to go?
They need to go to token.enigma.co, that's C-O. That's our token sale landing page. You can register there for updates. You'll get a lot more information about the product, the team, the token sale parameters, everything that you need to get involved for September 11 crowd sale.
Let us know a little bit about your team. Who are the team? What is their background?
We all have an MIT background, former graduate students or researchers. We met at MIT. We got excited about this project at MIT. Our co-founders wrote the white paper at MIT. We're backed by the Media Lab to some extent. We're based all around the world at this point. We're all committed to building the future of data together, and we have a wonderful team of advisors as well. All of our team and advisors and our LinkedIns and more information can be found on the enigma.co webpage.
Great stuff, Tor. Thanks for coming on the show. One of the best performing tokens this year must be the IOTA token. These guys raised $500,000 in December 2015, and that investment today is worth over $2 billion. All the way from Norway today, I've got the founder of the IOTA project, David Sonstebø. David, thanks for joining us on the show. Tell us a little bit about what IOTA does.
The IOTA project, like you said, began in 2015, and the goal of the project was always to create a distributed ledger that actually works for the real world. Because even though Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a lot of these other blockchains have got a lot of exposure and a lot of attention over the last few years, very little adoption has occurred in the real world. And the reason for that is the fact that the blockchain architecture is inherently limited by the bottleneck of the fact that you can only have one block at a time, and you can only fit as many transactions into that block is very finite. And that means you have a traditional bottleneck, which leads to this supply and demand economy where you essentially have to include a very high fee in order for your transaction to be preferred by the validators and therefore validated. And that prevents a lot of the promised use cases like microtransactions and so on and so forth. And the other big problem is that you can only process a handful of transactions per second in a regular blockchain. In IOTA, it's completely different. So we have made validation an intrinsic property of using the network. And that means that you no longer have to compensate an outside validator like a miner in Bitcoin or Ethereum. And so therefore, there is absolutely no fees on the transaction. And the second part that this new architecture, which is a directed acyclic graph rather than a blockchain, resolves is that of scalability. Because in IOTA, when you issue a transaction, you also validate two previous transactions in the network, and every other participant is doing the same thing, meaning that the more usage of the network that is occurring, the more validation is occurring. So therefore, the network becomes faster and faster in conjunction with the more usage on the network. So that is kind of the difference between IOTA and regular blockchain in a nutshell.
So what you're saying is that IOTA isn't a blockchain. It doesn't even run on the blockchain. It doesn't have any miners. And actually the users, the people that are using it, are kind of miners in a way because they are the guys that are confirming transaction. Are there any transaction fees on IOTA?
No, so exactly. So there is no block or chain in IOTA. Instead, we use what is called a directed acyclic graph architecture. So this means that you can have a parallelizable stream of transactions instead of this rigid sequential block after block after block chain. And this gets rid of the scalability limit, and it also gets rid of the fees on transaction. So there's absolutely no transaction whatsoever. But IOTA is still a completely public and decentralized distributed ledger. It's just a different architecture from the blockchain. So it retains the principles, but it makes it actually usable in the real world.
Give us an example of a use case where people can use IOTA.
Any kind of use case that you can think of that you would use Ethereum or Bitcoin or any of the other blockchains for, you can use IOTA for. The only difference is that in IOTA, you would not pay any fees on transactions, and the network wouldn't stop once you get adoption. Because that's one of the things we've seen over and over and over again with Bitcoin and Ethereum, is that when the network actually is quite active, when the volume is quite high, the network stagnates because you can only have a handful of transactions per second. Whereas in IOTA, the network gets faster and faster the more activity occurs on the ledger. And this means that you can now think of completely new use cases, like, for instance, when you're charging your car, your car can pay per watt of electricity that it's charging in real time. Or you can pay per API request, or you can pay per byte of data or bandwidth, or these kinds of very fine granular transactions that is only possible if you have, first of all, the ability to do high volume, and secondly, the ability to not have fees, because the fees, of course, eats up the profit margin that microtransactions would otherwise enable.
So I'm assuming if there's no miners, that means that the number of tokens in circulation today are actually the total number of tokens that are ever going to be in circulation. Is that correct?
That is completely correct, yes.
With so many cryptocurrencies and tokens out there, it can be really intimidating for the non-professional investor creating a cryptocurrency portfolio. So what we decided to do was to get an expert in the field to tell us how to build a cryptocurrency portfolio. Konstantin Antropov is the co-founder and trader at the Elements Group. Kon, we finally got you on our show. Tell us, how do we start building a cryptocurrency portfolio?
I would recommend to split this into phases. First, the newcomers of the market have to educate themselves. And the best way to do that is to pick a sum which they're happy to burn or lose, or not afraid that anything happens with this amount of money. It can be $100, it can be $1,000, it can be $10,000, whatever the person is comfortable. And then I would recommend to start looking into the top 10 cryptocurrencies and then shift that into tokens. And when the person has an understanding what those are, how markets operate, what are the exchanges, then we can shift to building a crypto portfolio. But essentially, you start with the cryptocurrencies and then you phase it 50-50 to tokens and cryptocurrencies.
Kon, what's the difference between a cryptocurrency and between a token?
So, cryptocurrency usually runs its own blockchain. The examples of those would be Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, etc. The token is something which runs on a blockchain which is already created. Usually it's an ERC20 token and it's run on an Ethereum blockchain. The examples are Omisgo, Augur, Golem, like tokens which run on Ethereum. In rare cases, you can have tokens which run on other side chains like Counterparty for the Bitcoin, but usually this is an ERC20 token and it's not a blockchain of itself.
So for our users who are just getting started out, how do you suggest they get started? So they take their money, they put their money into an exchange, and which cryptocurrency should they buy and which token should they buy?
So initially I would recommend going like 50-50 with Bitcoin and Ethereum and understanding on a fundamental level what are the different value propositions between Bitcoin and Ethereum. Then it's quite easy to start trading on other pairs, tokens, when you have already Bitcoin and Ethereum. Most of the cryptocurrency trading happens actually crypto to crypto rather than fiat to crypto. So when you have Bitcoin, Ethereum, you can then start looking into NAM, Dash, Litecoin, Ethereum Classic, the other cryptocurrencies that you have. And when you understand how they work and what is the value proposition for them, you can start looking into the second thing, which would be tokens, and then you can buy coins you understand, or you can start participating in the initial coin offerings or ICOs and buy the companies that only issue their coin, which then will be listed and traded.
So what you're saying is start off a little bit safely by playing in the cryptocurrencies and probably look at the top 10 cryptocurrencies because those are the safest cryptocurrencies. Once you've done that, start reading up about the ICOs and investing in the ICOs. Now, Con, would you invest in an ICO or would you invest in already listed tokens?
I would recommend first to educate myself about the investment. And if I understand more about the company which does the ICO, I would invest in that. So it depends on the amount of research you've done before. Usually there is more information about the company which is already listed and its coin or coin is already traded on the exchange. Usually you have multiple markets trading the same coin, and you can also have a back history of how the coin behaved during different situations. You can see the history, how it is correlated to other currencies, other tokens, or you can use it to hedge within the portfolio. So it is better to start educating yourself about already the coin which are listed and traded. And then when you see how those things work, then you can jump into the ICOs.
If you were going to buy 6 tokens or cryptocurrencies to put into your portfolio today, what would be your top 6?
The top 2 would definitely be Ethereum and Bitcoin. I would make a small position for the Bitcoin Cash because I believe it has a very strong but small community that supports it. I would definitely look into the Omis Go. I do believe that Bancor has a lot of interesting potential and solutions. And finally, I think that 0x and Enigma protocol are those 2 projects which can have a lot of value to the community and to the blockchain.
A few weeks ago, we ran a competition with our friends from Luno where we were going to give away 10,000 Rand worth of Bitcoin to 2 lucky viewers. Well, we've selected those viewers, and our winners are Adrian and Senzo Ngwenya. We'll get hold of you guys to give you guys your 10,000 Rand worth of Bitcoin. It's been another jam-packed show. We've been to all corners of the crypto world. We've been to Tel Aviv, to Silicon Valley, and to Norway. I can't wait for next week, Thursday night, our Crypto Night, when we carry on talking about the crypto markets. Until then, if you want to know anything about cryptocurrencies, you can get me on Twitter at CryptoManRun. Happy trading.